Hello, everybody, and welcome to Unanswered Questions. Sometimes during our live broadcast to schools, we don't just get enough time to answer all the amazing questions from students. So we're going to answer some of the top upvoted questions we didn't get to from November and December because holidays are coming up. So we won't have a full December to answer questions. Schools are wrapping up for the year. So we're going to on this episode, combine November and December.
Woohoo! Woohoo! Let's do her.
Okay, first question. Is cyberbullying illegal?
Oh, I'll take that question. Here in Canada, we have no specific crime called cyberbullying under the Criminal Code of Canada, which is our national criminal code. We're lucky here in Canada. We got one code applies to every province and every territory. In the U.S., it's different from state to state, right? However,
and generally, most states don't have like a cyberbullying rule.
But here in Canada, we have a variety of different laws that would fall under that category. So, good example: uttering threats, intimidation, hate crime, right? There's a variety of different categories under the criminal code that could be used if somebody's using technology for the purposes of digital peer aggression, or what's commonly known as cyberbullying.
Yeah, the big problem is a lot of people call rude behavior cyberbullying, but also people who break the law cyberbullying. You know, that really kind of loses power to the word.
Yeah, we find that a lot, right? Especially with adults, we have a habit of throwing everything into this basket and calling it bullying or cyberbullying, which really disempowers it, right? So, yeah.
Well, they make rude behavior sound worse than it is.
Exactly.
But, I mean, some people are allowed to be rude.
Right. There's nothing wrong, nothing illegal about being rude, mean, or disturbing. In fact, the way we deal with that type of behavior online is totally different than, cyberbullying or what we call digital peer aggression.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
If people do self-harm or suicide, do the people who cause them to do that get held responsible?
Well, I'll answer that one as well. I mean, it depends. A good example, the Amanda Todd case, the individual who was responsible for what happened to Amanda Todd, he was tried and convicted here in Canada for those crimes, right? So it really depends upon the individual and the type of crime. But yes, often there are consequences, right?
Is jail time possible for people who sexually harass others?
I feel important because this is all kind of under my wheelhouse this time. Usually they're all under your wheelhouse. Is jail time possible for people who sexually harass others online? Absolutely. I mean, we know that last year there were almost 3,000 cases of online crimes reported against youth in Canada last year, or last Stats Canada, which was 2023. So we know, and that's an underreported crime. Now, could some of those people ended up being convicted and going to jail? Yes. Do we have what those numbers are? No. But does it happen? Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it's also important to acknowledge that there is quite a degree of sexual harassment that can occur and that can be charged and convicted.
Yeah, there's so many confounding things that need to be looked at when it comes to sentencing, right? Are they going to go to jail? Is it going to be probation? All kinds of different things that can happen.
Yeah, and some people will call certain comments or rude behaviors online sexual harassment that doesn't technically fit the definition.
Correct.
So yeah, it gets quite tricky when you actually delve into it.
Well, yeah, like one of the things we always say is that so many people think that the law is black and white. It's all shades of gray, right? It really is.
I mean, yeah, there are some pretty clear black and white laws out there, but on the other hand, it's like, oh, yeah,
Yeah, that's true.
yeah. Humans are just too complicated.
Yes, especially you.
I'm very complicated.
Yes, you are.
Is sexting illegal?
Oh, that's another one for me. Again, the pat answer, it depends. For those under the age of 18, if it's two teens under the age of 18 in a private consensual relationship, sharing nudes within the privacy of that relationship, it's not exploitive in nature, not illegal. However, what makes it illegal is if anybody in that relationship takes that picture and shares it or shows it outside of that relationship without consent, we then have several criminal code charges that could apply.
Yeah.
And it applies to adults as well. Like if somebody is sharing a nude within an adult relationship, consensually, not illegal, but if anybody shares it outside of the relationship without consent, illegal.
Yeah, it's going to depend on your area of jurisdiction.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the Canadian context. Yeah. Some U.S. states have very similar legislative schemes similar to that.
Some U.S. states make it illegal, period, which I think is backwards thinking, because that's what prevents a lot of teens in some of those states from coming forward to report the crime in order for it to be dealt with, because they're afraid that if they do, they're going to be arrested, charged, and convicted as well.
Well, because they might be.
Exactly. And that makes no sense, right? Anyways.
How many young people actually go to jail every year for talking to minors online?
Well, talking to minors isn't illegal.
Yeah,
right?
you can talk to people.
You can talk to people.
Now, I'm assuming the subtext here is they're like
luring
and predators.
Yeah. Again, I mentioned that there were just about 3,000 reported online crimes against youth in 2023. Of those who went to jail, don't know, but it can happen.
What specific charges or jail time can people face if they're under the age of 18 under the law?
It depends. Again, there's a whole variety of different factors, and there's some guidelines with respect to charging guidelines that judges have to follow with respect to the Youth Criminal Justice Act here in Canada as well, right? So, but again, it depends upon a whole variety of different factors when it comes to how much jail time or what kind of consequences can come about for those under the age of 18 in Canada. Again, can differ in different countries.
Is it illegal to record gossip or slander at school and share it with the person being talked about?
Go for it.
Well, it gets tricky. It's going to depend on your legal jurisdiction area. I can speak to it here in Canada. You have to be a part of a conversation in order to record it secretly.
Called one-party consent.
One-party consent. In some jurisdictions around the world, some U.S. states, you need both party consent to record a conversation secretly. Right. So it gets tricky on how it's doing. If you plant if you put your phone in someone's locker in order to overhear a conversation that you're not in part of, now we got problems.
Yeah, now we have problems.
Yeah, for sure. So caution. But if you're part of the conversation, but then again, if you're part of it slandering, or maybe,
yeah, you got to be careful.
Yeah, that's a challenging one. Yeah. Again, mostly going to depend on your legal jurisdiction.
And as we always say, check with your local legal expert.
Is it illegal for a 17-year-old to send explicit photos or sext to a 13 or 12-year-old?
The answer is yes. I mean, there are age exceptions, but specific to that age range that you just shared there, yes.
Yeah. It's going, here in Canada, we call it the close in age exemption. Again, different jurisdictions will dictate differently. Some places you can't, but some places you can.
For sure.
So, yeah, it's challenging when you take the internet. We're all connected, but we're all bound by different laws. It gets very challenging.
Oh, we're getting into questions for you now.
What should you do if your account gets stolen? Well, try to recover it is the first step. You don't want someone using your name and identity doing things that you don't control. That's going to be a bad situation.
But the challenge you find, though, is a lot of them who want to recover it, they no longer remember their usernames or emails, right? Or passwords.
Yeah, that can be a challenge. If you can't recover it, report it as breaking one of the terms of services. Attempt to get the account removed and deleted.
Yeah,
that's really if you can't recover it. How can we avoid getting sexually harassed online?
That's difficult. You can't prevent it.
That would be like me walking to you on the street and sexually harassing you on the street. Yeah. You can't prevent it. I guess you could do things to avoid it by never leaving your house.
Or not going to sites where that type of behavior is prevalent is a good example. We know that there are some social media sites where that kind of stuff just happens. It's just a part of that culture. Being careful about who you invite into your friends cohort specific to the social media platform that you're on. Are ways to go about doing that. And if you are being sexually harassed by somebody, block and delete them immediately if at all possible.
What do you do if someone steals your password? Change it right away. I think that's the first. Most, hacks are nothing like the movies. They're actually quite boring. It's usually just figuring out or stealing your password. But changing your password stops the majority of, hacks that happen out there. But if you can't, delete your account if you can't recover it. Mm-hmm. What do you do if you get sent a nude?
Yeah, good question. I'll talk about it from a Canadian perspective. If somebody sends you an unsolicited nude, if it's of them and they're under the age of 18, they have just distributed child pornography, right? That's illegal. Number one. Number two, it can also, even if they're not under the age of 18 or over or under the age of 18, it could be considered indecent communications under the criminal code as well.
Harassing communications.
Yeah. So, but again, it's going to be case dependent. If it's somebody who you know, then, and they send you a nude, first thing I'd be saying is stop, don't do it again. I've screen captured what it is you've done. And if you do it again, I'm going to report it to the appropriate person, right? So again, if somebody's sending you an unsolicited nude, it doesn't matter if you're a teen or adult, without your consent. In Canada, that's illegal. Doesn't matter if you're over or under the age of 18.
Yep. What do you do if someone makes a fake conversation with you online? I guess I can interpret that two ways, where someone puts your name into like a Photoshop or like a fake texting app and it makes it look like you're saying things that you're not, or that someone is communicating with you and they're being fake. I see that two ways.
Yeah, like a catfish.
Yeah, like a catfish. Yeah. So I guess we can answer both of those ways.
Go for it.
First one, if it's a catfish, you would have to, eventually you probably find out. If you do, depending on what they're asking for, what they're doing, I mean, there could be certain laws being broken, but not always. I mean, people can have a fake account and message you. I don't think there's any laws against that.
No, I mean, a lot of teens have Finstagram accounts, right?
Yeah.
I mean,
so
maybe in violation of their terms of service, but not illegal.
Yeah, so if that happens, just block and remove that person if you don't like what's going on. Now, if someone is using your name and creating fake evidence of you by putting you in a fake conversation.
Personation,
potentially. Yeah, there's some different laws I think that probably could apply there. Yep, I would say screen capture it, capture any of the actual real conversation and use that as proof would be the my suggestion there. What do you do if someone spreads another person's nude to you?
We see this a lot, right? We've had a lot of teens and educators and counselors report this, that once another student's nude at a school is sent to somebody, it starts to spread, right? And what teens need to know, and we share this in all our presentations on this very topic, by you sending that nude to somebody else, you're breaking the law. It's called the non-consensual distribution of an intimate image, right? So that's one offense. And if that person is under the age of 18, technically that's also the distribution of child sexual abuse material, which could be a second offense, right? So immediately, if somebody sends you a nude of somebody else, then immediately I would be reporting it to a parent, a teacher, a counselor, whoever it is at the school. And if needed, also be reporting it to the police. But by you sending it, you are breaking the law. Yeah, in Canada, in most states.
I would say, I think most jurisdictions around the world, well, maybe not everywhere around the world, but most developed.
Even developed countries.
Yeah, that's true.
Just report it.
What should you do if you've been the victim of a situation involving photos and want to report it, but you're worried about your family's reaction?
Yeah. So what's really interesting, I can speak for British Columbia as a good example. Under the new Intimate Image Protection Act, you can report it and they are under no obligation to notify parents. So you can do it without a parent to be notified for it in order to be dealt with. However, one of the things we do share with teens, and we've now dealt with 326 who've reached out to us for a whole variety of different reasons on this topic. One of the things I share with teens is that if this nude is starting to go public, you better let your parents know, because they're likely going to hear about it, and better they hear it from you than maybe the police or school principal. And I know that's sometimes hard to do because teens are afraid that parents are going to overreact, primarily by taking the phones away from them, which is like lopping off an arm, right? And that's one of their biggest concerns, that the family's going to overreact. But that's one of the things that you can do. We helped another teen who came from a culture that if the parents found out, they would be disowned and kicked out of the family, right? That's the religious culture that they were in. So in that case, we were still able to help them by giving them the link to the Intimate Image Protection Service here in British Columbia that was able to help that teen deal with that situation. And the family, they were under no obligation to notify the family. So
is there a quick way? Is there a quick way to identify?
I think you just had a frog in your throat.
Yeah, something. Yeah. Is there a quick way to identify and defend yourself in a situation with a predator?
Go for it.
Well, if you identify that someone has ill intent, number one, you want to capture and record all the things they're doing to you, number one, and then you want to, cease communications after that right away, and then seek help right away.
Yeah.
Those are the three go-to steps. There's more things you can do depending on the situation, but record it, stop it, and yeah.
I also think I love Sun Tzu, The Art of War, the book, right? Know thy enemy and win 1,000 battles. One of the things that I believe in as well is the more that we can educate youth on the grooming process, the better prepared they are to deal with it. Because if they understand the tricks and lures that these individuals will use, both known and unknown to the child, then that child is more likely going to react accordingly. So if they understand that luring process, then they can identify very quickly in that engagement, because these guys are really good at what it is that they do, right? Like they're really good at what they do. And so if teens and youth understand what that process is, then they now know, okay, what's going on here isn't right. And now they can remove themselves from that process before these guys get their talons into them.
Mhm.
Does that make sense?
Yep.
Yeah.
Should we restrict access for kids under 10 years old from social media?
Well, I think it depends upon the type of social media. So, good example, we know a program called Kinzu, right? It's specifically designed for those under the age of 13. That's technically a social media.
Yeah.
But most of the major social media platforms like TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Discord, you have to be at least 13 years of age to join, according to their terms of service, right?
But you don't need it. That's to make an account though,
Yeah.
right? So you can still watch TikTok and YouTube
Yeah.
without an account. So I guess you wouldn't be able to ban that
Do I
necessarily.
think we should let those under the age of 10 years have free range online? Absolutely not, right? Absolutely not, right? So, again, but, somebody who's under the age of 10 with a parent doing some stuff on social media, I mean, that's a part of maybe the learning and teaching agency and digital literacy, but, those under the age of 10 having free range access to the internet and social media, nay, 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 nay.
Yeah. Do you agree with a school's no cell phone policy?
I get to answer a lot of these questions. This is awesome because most of the time it's you. Do I agree with it? What's interesting is what's being reported in the media across. I'm speaking in Canada, but also in the United States. They say it's a ban. This a no phone ban. They're not bans. Like if you read them, they're restrictions. Basically, all these policies that we see in schools across Canada and here in British Columbia in particular, when you read it, it still gives teachers the ability and the agency to allow teens to use their phones when it comes to instructional or educational reasons.
Mhm.
What I'm in full agreement with is not allowing teens to use their cell phones during class to go onto TikTok or onto Snapchat or to have their earbuds in their ears listening to music while the teacher's teaching or sending messages to one another, right? Which is distracted. Like that's where I agree with it, right? So again, I think there's this real big misunderstanding surrounding these policies that are in place, especially because that's the way it's reported in the media that the schools are banning, the provinces banned. No, they haven't, right? They've restricted the use of these devices, and I agree with those restrictions, right?
Yeah. Is it better to have one personal and one professional social media account with your personal, private, and professional public?
Go for it.
Yeah, that's something we directly teach students in high school going,
Mhm.
yeah, hey, you're doing cool, great, amazing things. Share that with people on an account that's curated to show how awesome you are. So you get your scholarships, grants, opportunities, and people see how cool you are, Google your name, and they see all the curated things that you're sharing that make you stand out. I mean, it's a competitive world out there, so
Yeah.
you need to have an advantage. And
Yeah.
social media is one of the ways you can leverage to your advantage.
And in fact, that's the program that we offer, right? Leveraging social media for college, university, sporting, and employment opportunities, right?
You betcha. What do you think about Snapchat's private stories or Instagram close friends stories?
Go for it.
I think they're cool. I think it's a cool way of sharing content with a certain group of people that you want to share that content with. There's nothing inherently wrong with that. I know some people are worried and concerned about private messages, but I mean, we've had that since the beginning of texting. Private messages, sending a text just to you or a group of friends.
I used to do it in high school with crib notes.
Yeah, or that
Right?
too.
Like I did this today. It's the technology today The concern now is when things go private when it comes to predation exploitation, right?
Hmm.
That's where it becomes the issue. But I find that a lot of teens today, they're moving away. Like we were just at a high school where the grade 9 students we were talking to, Snapchat is no longer the number one way they're communicating with one another in private messaging. They're using iMessage or WeChat now to do their interactions,
Yep.
right, with one another. They're becoming very specific to who they are messaging and chatting with.
Yeah.
So again, it's not as if they're doing it with randos all over the
Actually,
place, right?
yeah, that's funny because I sent you a video with Australia banning social networks for kids,
Mhm.
and there was one politician asking, it was Snapchat's being banned, but WhatsApp's not being banned. But yet WhatsApp has similar features to Snapchat, and they're like, why is this one not being banned? I don't know, maybe because it's owned by Meta. Who knows?
Yeah,
But it's like, what? No, they all do the same thing.
yeah, it's kind of funny, right? Because it's boomers making these decisions without even consulting and talking to teens. Like teens and youth need to play a more of an inclusive role when it comes to the designing of these laws and legislations and policies, right? Like they have a lot to offer us as adults. We adults just need to be willing to listen. Yeah, we adults, we bring life experience to the table, but these kids bring a lot of experience to help us boomers understand how these kids are actually using technology.
Do apps like Snapchat archive, delete conversations and photos? Is that data accessible to the RCMP if needed?
Yeah, Snapchat's interesting because what's available, depending upon the length, the photos may still be there, depending upon length and time. But what Snapchat does collect is all the metadata associated with those accounts, and that metadata, a lot of it is what is needed when it comes to court and convictions and stuff. And is that information accessible to law enforcement through apps like Snapchat? Yes, through a production order, search warrants, and those types of issues. However, there are some apps coming out now that are more the messaging type of apps that even if law enforcement serves a production or search warrant on them, there is no data there, right? Like the app that comes to mind, I think is Signal or
Mhm.
Telegram, right?
Yep.
Where they don't collect any and store any of that data. But on things like Snapchat, depending upon the length of time, does maintain those pictures on file. However, what they do collect is the metadata.
Yeah, by the time the police get involved, usually pictures are gone on their
Yeah.
servers by that time.
Yeah.
So there is a window typically, but Snapchat does delete things.
Yeah, except for the metadata, right?
Yeah. Why can pages that create nudes remain online and free to use?
What?
Because, well, if you want to create your own nude image privately, there's nothing typically illegal about that.
Mm.
So that's their. I mean, I've never seen that used in that way. I mean, all those apps that nudify people, I've only seen them as
Oh.
being used in non-ethical ways.
Oh, yeah,
But
yeah,
in the
yeah, yeah,
terms of
yeah, yeah, yeah,
service,
Nudify apps.
they get around the
Yeah, I think you read that question. I was reading a little differently, but you're right. When it comes
yeah.
to the Nudify apps, and the other issue is that some of these Nudify apps that are being created, the servers are in countries that North America law
Yeah.
enforcement has no jurisdiction. So that's why they're on there and available for free, right? And a
Yep.
lot of times they're not as free as you think they are. They also have built-in things that you need to pay to get,
Mhm.
anyways. So, but that's the reason why.
What are the main social media apps that employers or post-secondary schools look at to access digital footprint information?
They'll look at the major ones, whatever are popular today. So believe it or not, Facebook, depending upon where you're located, in Northern Canada is a good example. Facebook is still popular with teens, right? But they'll look at the big ones. They'll look at Meta. They'll look at Snapchat. They'll look at, TikTok. They'll look at all the major ones. But, I think it's important to know that they'll just do a cursory search. Maybe they're going to check the top 10 or 20 results. It's not as if they're doing deep dives, depending upon what it is you're applying for, right? So
Do all free apps sell your information?
most do. That's how they make their money.
Yeah, I can't
We can't say all.
say all. I mean, I
Yeah.
wouldn't have proof of
Yeah,
all. That,
yeah.
that's a lot to include in the all.
Yeah.
But I think in our experience, most do.
Yeah, it's the only way they can make their money, right? I mean, here's a really good example. I just wrote an article on cars and about how much information on-car computers are now collecting about usage. Not only are they collecting about your speed, your brake, if you got your seatbelt on, but they're also now collecting what radio stations are you listening to, right? And so what's interesting about that is this document I just read from the United States is now showing that these car companies are making millions of dollars off of that data that they're selling to third parties. as well, right? So it's that's why they call it the attention economy, or the data economy. Like, that's where the money's coming from. So although you think it's free, it's not as free as you think it is.
Do you know how much your data is being sold for?
Depends.
Depends on what they want. I mean, last I reviewed, it was just one data point. It's just like a couple cents,
Yeah,
like in a massive database.
yeah.
It depends what they're looking for.
Yeah,
Right. If it's medical information, it's probably a bit more expensive.
exactly.
If you delete something, is it gone?
Maybe yes, maybe no.
Well, it depends on the tech you're using, depends on if you sent it to anybody, depends on retention on servers if something's gone forever, and I mean, never guaranteed.
I mean, a really good example of that, we share this, is I think it was iOS 17.5, right, where they did the update. And all of a sudden, pictures that had, adults and teens had deleted off their phones started to reappear back into their photo
which they
albums
thought they deleted.
that they thought they deleted, right? So, I mean, this is why we always say that just because you hit that delete button, never believe that what you deleted is going to be gone. It could still be out there, right?
Can you delete things from your past that you find online?
Sometimes yes, sometimes no, but that's stuff that you can't delete. You can bury it, so it makes it harder to find.
Yeah, and I think the longer something is on there, the more it gets copied and reshared. So it does get a bit more challenging to truly make it gone.
That is something that we talk about in our leveraging program for teens, because there is still this belief. Like, I still hear people saying, some in our industry saying, well, it's a digital tattoo, it's going to be seen forever. Well, guess what? Tattoos can be removed nowadays, right? They can be removed. So, just because you post something doesn't necessarily, like, I still hear people say, well, the internet never forgets. Yeah, sometimes it can. And there are ways that we can make it harder to find. So if you can't delete it, we can bury it, so it makes it much harder to find, right? So
if someone photoshops an adult toy into a picture and posts it, is that illegal?
An adult toy. Like my Ferrari, that's an adult toy.
I wonder what they're referring.
My boat.
Yes.
That's an adult toy.
Yeah.
Oh, not those types of adult toys.
Yeah.
You're thinking about things that maybe. Well, anyways, I'm not going to get into it. You two might do no. But we're talking of the sexual nature.
Yeah.
Right? Okay.
Interesting. I haven't seen any. I can't make an interpretation because I haven't seen any court cases that really dealt with that.
I'm thinking, well, depending upon how they're using that toy.
Yeah, there's definitely context involved there. But if you just,
I mean, if it's just a picture of an adult toy, just that. But if they're doing something with the adult toy that is sexual in nature, that could be illegal.
Yeah, there's context would be very important.
Context.
If someone takes an unconsensual photo of a clothed minor but zooms in on a private area, is that still considered a nude?
Oh, this is right up.
Well, actually, there is court case law on that.
In Canada.
Yeah, in Canada, yes. Yeah. In British Columbia, there was a case of a person in a van. Yeah, that always starts good. A story with a guy in a van.
White panel van.
Yeah, with a camera, with a zoom lens in like a splash park, zooming in on basically that. And yes, they were charged and convicted for that. So
white panel van. I mean, when I was in policing, that's pre-internet. It was when it came to abduction, it was always the white panel van, right? Stranger in a white panel van. You know what? When we did our research on this, we didn't find one case in Canada or the United States where a child was abducted by somebody who was driving a white panel van. Not one. Anyways, back on topic.
That seems like not practical. You actually have to if you have that for your own personal use, you have to actually go pay for it, and then it wouldn't be used for anything else.
And as a predator, if I know that the thought is white panel vans are danger, why would I be using a white panel van?
Yeah,
right. To say.
Yeah. What should you do if you've downloaded music or films that you don't own? Get rid of them right away. Yeah. Would be my recommendation.
Yeah, here in Canada, that's a breach of copyright, right?
Yeah, there are licensing challenges with that. Likely, will you be sued because of it?
Probably not.
Probably not.
But it's still illegal.
Could it happen? Sure. Yeah. Why do predators target younger people?
Sometimes they target yet older people. I mean, what's interesting about online predators is they're very age and gender specific, right? So maybe they like youth that are between the ages of 5 and 8. Any younger don't like them, any older don't like them. Or maybe they like youth between the ages of 17 and 21. Any younger don't like them, any older don't like them, right? So they're very specific on those, so on individuals. But yeah, they can target younger people. They can also target older people as well.
Can mask presenting people become victims of femme presenting people, or is it always those who are masked are targeted by femmes?
Did you say mask?
Yeah, masculine.
Oh,
Mask.
masculine. Right? Just in case, right? Like when you say mask, you know, like I'm thinking, well, somebody's wearing a mask. You mean masculine?
Yeah.
Can they become? Yes,
Yeah.
they can. In fact, here in Victoria, we had a court case 2.5 years ago now, where it was an online predator who was female or identified as female, targeting those who identified as masked and convicted here in Victoria. So yeah, it can happen.
Are immigrant youth more at risk of online exploitation?
The answer is yes. I mean, what the research is showing us is that those who identify as First Nations, Aboriginal, Indigenous, individuals who have a learning disability, those who come from broken families, and yes,
Those who are new to the country.
yeah, new to the country, they are definitely higher groups that are targeted.
Yeah.
Yes.
Why are perpetrators of some crimes often from low income countries?
Because often those countries have no law enforcement or courts to enforce it, right?
Yeah.
Like we find, like especially when it comes to extortion, a lot of these are from countries like Somalia, Nigeria, the Ivory Coast of Africa, where law enforcement doesn't exist, or if it does, these organized crimes that are doing this, groups that are doing these types of crimes, they pay off the police,
Yeah.
right? So that's the reason why. However, having said that, some of these perpetrators, more than a few, also come from Canada or the United States as well. Like there's been lots of cases here in Canada where law enforcement have arrested online predators who are from Canada or the US.
How can we ensure trust and respect if we choose to engage in sexting?
That all comes down to relationships and understanding what consent is, right? So again, we talk about that in detail in one of the presentations that we do surrounding the issues of a relationship and what consent means, and how consent should be applied, not just to the topic of sexting, but any kind of interaction, intimate interaction, or any type of interaction you're having with others. Like rather than just grabbing your phone so I can look at it, I should be asking for permission, right? Getting your consent. So that's what that is all about. And I find that a lot of teens and even some adults, they think consent is something different if it's done online compared to when it's done offline.
Mhm.
But the courts here in Canada have said, no, 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 no. Consent applies. There's no difference between consent when it applies to doing things online or offline.
Yeah. Why do people send nudes? Is it to feel wanted?
Go ahead.
Can be sometimes. There's a lot of different impacts. I mean, yes, some people want to have connection. They want to feel wanted. Some people want to because they think it might be funny. Some people want to because they think there's no consequences.
Attention-seeking behavior.
Attention-seeking behavior.
Mm.
Any of the reasons you can think of for a person who wants to do that is a valid reason why someone would. Now, do most people want to send nudes because they want to have a connection? Probably. I would say in the cases we get involved in, that's probably the situation.
And in fact, we find that most nudes that are sent within the context of a relationship, right?
Yeah.
Like it's like you say, it's very rare, and that they're sending them just to randos, right? All over the place. But usually it's involved. But there's all kinds of reasons.
How do people fall in love with each other through a keyboard?
It is amazing to look at the research on this, on how people today, a lot of them are engaged or in relationships because they met online, right? Like
Mhm.
you and your spouse, right?
Mhm.
Your partner, you met online,
Yeah, true.
right?
Yeah, I mean, it's all about sharing information, who you are, understanding their morals and ethics and beliefs, and that you can find out through a keyboard as well. And you can meet someone physically who could lie about who they are, both online and offline. So it's about understanding and getting to know someone, which you
I-
can do online or offline.
And I'm gonna be reflective as a boomer. right? Like pre-internet, we used to do it via
Pen pal?
pen pals,
Yeah.
letters, right, and that kind of stuff. So
Yeah.
kind of same thing.
Yeah, it's just you get to know someone more because you get to send messages instantly.
Yeah.
Back then, you have to send it through the mail, assuming the post office was working. And
Yeah, and you can see one another now through the use of technology,
true,
right?
that as well. For a safe relationship, what would be the exact age gap?
Again, that's a
Well, age. Well, there are different legal jurisdictions will have different age gaps for a proper legal relationship,
yeah.
especially as a teen. Although once you get over the age of 18, then you're kind of you can be in a relationship with anybody.
Age of 16, actually. The age of consent in Canada is 16.
Yeah, but I think most G7 nations,
Okay.
definitely everyone over the age of 18.
Yeah.
I mean, some states.
Yeah.
Well, again, some states you can get
21.
you can get married at like 13 or something. So
Really?
I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. There's when it comes to relationships and what's allowed and what's not allowed by age, it varies.
Murky.
Yeah.
Legally.
Yeah.
Right? Legally.
I don't know. I don't know. I guess there are certain I don't know if I'm the one to say that, but there are certain the bigger the age gap, the bigger questions there are as to why.
Exactly.
Like, I don't know. If you're
Gotta be careful.
If you're a very popular movie star and you never date anyone under the age of like, what was it, 25? I don't know. I think there's questions. I don't know. But then again, love is love, and sometimes young adults date those who are in geriatric programs. I don't know.
And there's some religions
True.
that allow kids that once they reach puberty, they get married off to adults, right? So again, there's so many confounding issues here because what is a safe relationship to us here in North America may not be in a different part of the world, right? Like it's so murky.
Yeah.
Right? So
yeah, I would say probably the closer the age gap, I think you're probably going to have more in common. Probably going to be, in my experience, probably a better relationship. Yeah. I would assume. Yeah. But that's a cultural, legal, and beliefs question.
Yeah, for sure.
That goes way beyond the scope that we can answer here. Sure.
And I got my beliefs, but I'm not going to share my beliefs to the audience because my beliefs are my beliefs. Right? Legally, however, the age of consent in Canada is 16, but we also have those close-in age exceptions as well, right? That have to be considered. Mm-hmm. So I think when it comes to any relationship, it's all about trust, consent, all those issues that we need to be talking about.
Yeah. Yeah.
Boy, that was a murky. That was a politically hot
that is avoiding landmines.
Yes.
Whoop, whoop.
Oh, yeah. Yeah.
Why do people make fun of others because they have different style or aren't like them?
$1 million question, right? Like there's so much research on that very issue. Right?
I think that's just, unfortunately, the human condition.
Yeah.
I think humans just have a natural tendency to connect with those who are like-minded and get motivated by having a common enemy, whatever that might be. That's, I mean, isn't that all of politics? Isn't that why we have political parties, right? And sport teams and all that stuff. It's like, well, it's superficial.
I know, right? Like we say, the message to kids is don't bully one another, say nice things and blah, blah, blah. And then you look at our politicians and you go, they're our leaders and they're doing the exact opposite of what we're telling kids to do. So it's no wonder kids are looking at us adults going, really? What about you guys? Have you thought about looking in the mirror?
Yeah.
Like it's brutal. It's the polarization and the politicization of differences and how it's being used as a political weapon and causing all kinds of greater issues in our society, like misogyny, like it's just brutal. And really, is it the kids or is it the adults? I think it's more the adults than it is the kids. Right?
Yeah. I mean, you can't blame the kids for following what their leaders are doing. I think there was research, I think in the 90s, that public leaders, their clothing style would dictate the decade of style going forward, right? So, yes. So, there's a lot of challenges with that.
Yeah, it's just, we keep pointing our fingers at the kids and their behavior online, and I keep going, well, they're learning it from the adults, right? Look at
Mhm.
what the adults are doing and stuff, right? So, anyways.
Yeah. What scares you the most about the digital future?
I think the misuse of technology, like the new AI deep fake stuff that's going on. I mean, there's some cool stuff you can do with it, but I think that's what I find is, am I scared that the internet, like the Terminator, is going to take over the world and kill humanity? I don't think so. I don't think that that's going to happen. What scares me is just how technology as it develops can be weaponized in ways that we never thought about. And by the time it does happen, it's kind of too late because the toothpaste is already out of the tube and it's hard to put it back in again. So again, that's where I think digital literacy education is so important. But that's what kind of scares me the most.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more the consolidation of digital power, whatever that might look
Oh,
like.
that's a good one
So
too.
either
Yeah.
a corporation owns all the digital information and they get to dictate what we see and how we see it, or maybe it's a acting agency that maybe uh, firewalls its country from the outside world. I think those are the greater challenges
Yeah.
because
Yeah.
as more tools and tech becomes developed, we are seeing more splintered factions in terms of different countries having their own basic internet that it's segregated from the rest of the world. We are seeing more of that,
Hmm.
which does have challenges.
Hmm.
How do you feel about recording police
Oh,
violence?
I'll answer that one. Being that I was a police officer for 30 years, I agree with it. Right? Yeah, one of the things, number one, speaking for Canada, number one, it is not illegal for anybody to record anything the police are doing within a public area as long as you're not obstructing them, right? Like if police are making an arrest and you look at the arrest and you're going, they shouldn't be doing that, and you're recording it from a distance, nothing illegal about that. Do they have the right to demand that they give you that phone and take your phone and delete it? No, they don't, right? So I actually believe that recording what the police are doing within public, especially when it comes to things that they shouldn't be doing, is a good thing because it applies to accountability. I mean, that's one reason why law enforcement is now, a lot of them are now moving to body worn video as well, because sometimes a recording, if you're getting it from this side, doesn't necessarily reflect what the officers may be dealing with as well. So a good example, you may see an officer overreacting where a camera's being held on them, but what you don't see is what the person is doing behind the camera that may be igniting the situation, right? So by the police having the Victoria Police Department, we were the first police department in Canada to use body worn video when we tested it. And there were a number of cases that were brought forward where these individuals complained that the police did something they shouldn't have done. And then when we showed the body worn video, those complaints were withdrawn immediately because they were basically lying about what happened, right? So, I mean, it works both ways, but am I in favor of the general public recording what police are doing when it comes to the interaction, especially the use of force? Absolutely, as long as you're not interfering with what the police are doing at the time. In other words, obstructing what it is that they're doing. So if law enforcement says to you, move back, stay back, go ahead and video, but move back, stay back, well, then follow that direction. Because if you don't, you could be arrested for the obstruction. However, can they demand that you not videotape them? No. Can they take your camera from you and delete what's on there? No. Could they get a warrant later on to take it? Absolutely, right? If they have legal jurisdiction at the time, or if there's an exigent circumstance that needs to be dealt with immediately when it comes to life protection.
Yeah. And I think it's going to get easier now that more cars have cameras, more people have cameras on them, more buildings have more cameras. I think just everything we do, just in the general public, is always being captured and recorded.
Kind of Orwellian when you think about it.
Yeah, but it really would be like the state controls all the cameras. This is like
That's what you're worried about, right? That's one of your worries.
Yeah, either the state or just it doesn't matter who it is, whatever uh, large central being. But each
Like
business.
China, what they're doing with their surveillance technology and stuff.
Well, yeah, I mean that's an example, right? Like they have complete control over what people see and how they see it. So that is a challenge, of course, and yeah. So each business is its own entity, and each person are their own entities. And yes, the state have their own CCTV cameras, but each entity has its own recording mechanism. So
Mhm.
we're not there, I think, in the Orwellian state yet.
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 Wow, a lot of the questions today I could answer. Well, usually most of these questions are directed at you, but I think that kind of reflects a lot of the programs that we presented in the past month, right?
Mhm.
Surrounding, privacy, digital literacy, sexting, sextortion, kind of issues that we dealt with. But some great questions.
Indeed.
Yeah.
And yeah, those are the top upvoted questions from students from November and December. Thank you all so much, and we'll see you all in the new year for more questions.
2025. Wow.
We'll
Bye,
see you.
everybody.
Bye-bye for now.